When we met, I could not help but be inspired by the sense of optimism and energy that Alton Carter had, not only for the kids, but also for his energy to raise CASA's awareness within the state of Oklahoma. Author Alton Carter is a former foster child and police officer, now the Director of Youth Ministries at the First United Methodist Church of Stillwater. He has dedicated his life to working with young people and has recently published his childhood story, The Boy Who Carried Bricks. Abandoned by his father and neglected by his mother, shuttled between foster homes and a boys' ranch for most of his formative years, Alton refused to let his circumstances define him. He keeps his eye out for those who might help lighten his load, never losing hope that they somehow exist. Today, Alton leaves a legacy of hope and understanding, not only for his own children, but for other children like young Alton. Alton makes his home in central Oklahoma with his wife, Kristen, and their sons, Kelton and Colin. Please join me as Alton shares his journey through foster care and the other side.
Growing up from, my earliest memories, I can remember my mom was sort of addicted to prescription medicine. There were 5 kids in our family. We all had different dads. We were often left, by ourselves unattended. By 8, DHS came in and said, we had had enough, and they took us away from my mother and placed us with my grandmother, which was sort of a critical situation where my grandmother had tons of people living with her who were abusive and alcoholic uncles who often beat us and made us drink whiskey and alcohol. So at about 10 and a half, 11, I decided that I'd had enough of that and called the police on my uncle after some abuse, got taken away, went to a couple of foster homes and ended up at the Perkins Boys Ranch. We had a ranch dad, again, very abusive, used racial slurs, treated us like hostages, made us, bear crawl and do all sorts of evil punishment. Ran away from the boys' ranch after 3 years. Got hooked up with DHS. My DHS worker said, hey, we found you a foster home back in Perkins where you came from. So I thought, I don't want to stay home, so I'll go back to Perkins. When we get back to Perkins, we found out that my ranch dad that they fired for child abuse at the boys' ranch had applied to be foster parents. And my DHS worker dropped me off with my ranch dad. So I stayed there about 6 months and then ran away. By the time I'd finished high school, I'd been in many, many foster homes. I was at Ellie Rader, terrible foster homes, and graduated from Cushing. Was the first person in the history of my family to ever graduate from high school. No one had ever finished 9th grade. Ended up getting a college degree at OSU and ended up getting hired at the First United Methodist Church as a youth director. I wrote a book titled The Boy Who Carried Bricks. And the title came from when we were at the boys' ranch, one of the punishments the ranch dad made us do was carry bricks. You would have to walk 40 yards, pick up 5 bricks, walk down and set them down, and you'd have to do that for 2 hours. Those were just some of the punishments. Well, symbolically, we all have issues or bricks, things that we carry that we need to set down. So I wrote this book after my mom passed away, and the story is just about all the things that I kind of endured as a kid, the pain and suffering. But it also shines a light to all those people who were positive and gave me encouragement when my family kind of left me alone or acted like they didn't care. There was a whole bunch of circumstances that happened that really strangers that showed up in my life that sort of showed me that they cared about me. In our family, it was not common, or it wasn't something we did to get hugged or told that you appreciate it. So I found it in, one of my 4th grade teachers who went above and beyond to make a difference in my life. I had these dreams of wanting to be more than what my family had. I grew up watching every man beat, women and go to prison. And even at a young age, I didn't want any part of that. Most of the issues that I went through as a kid, I literally went through by myself. So when I was placed at the boys' ranch, my DHS worker didn't show up to visit. So watching and seeing how CASA works, it would have been nice to have someone there, at least to visit me on an occasion, to show up to court, or even to help intervene when some of these issues, getting placed from my boys' ranch back to the dad after he was fired. I believe that a CASA worker would have stepped in and been a voice to say, hey, we can't do this. I have a nephew now who's in the system, who chose to be just like, pretty much all the other males in my family. And watching his CASA worker has been unbelievable. She has been at every court hearing. She has helped him and went to visit him at every DHS placement that he's been at, group homes and shelters. He has literally in the last 9 months been through about 9 shelters because of his behavior. But his CASA worker has not given up on him, and she has showed up at every one of those systems. So to me, it sort of helps me heal from the past. I'm watching her invest, and it gives me hope and believing in what CASA's doing. I can honestly tell you that kid knows that there's someone else that's a complete stranger that cares about him. There's been instances, where I've went to court with kids and they've had a CASA worker there. And seeing a kid bond or communicate with a CASA worker, it was foreign to me because I didn't get to experience that growing up. But you have a kid who can connect with sometimes a complete stranger. At least that kid knows they're not alone. And that's a huge issue for kids that are struggling, is just to know that there's someone there caring for you. Sometimes the greatest help comes from strangers. The greatest help comes from people that you would never suspect that would care about you.